I watch Webberville Road pretty frequently too.
Which
Right?
I do, but if they could spur that, all as well.
All right, good evening, welcome everybody to the Village of Webberville Council meeting. Today is March 11th, 2025. We'll start with roll call.
Yeah, no problem. Something.
Here.
Shelburne. Here. Stanfield.
Here.
Wolfen.
Here.
Tony.
Here. We have a quorum. Everybody please stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Do we have an approval for the agenda?
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, brings us to public comment at 6:01. Do we have any comments from the public?
Just a question.
Yes, sir.
Does Max have his CDL yet?
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, that's a HR issue. I don't think it's appropriate to have that conversation here.
We've had that discussion in the October meeting where it was stated he had 3 months to get his license. It's been 5 months. Is he still working for us? Because he's not qualified for the job. He does not meet the requirements for the labor in the job description.
That's still neither here nor there. I mean, it's an HR issue. I mean,
Who does HR here?
if you want to.
Who's in charge of HR?
If you want to put in a formal complaint?
Who's in charge of HR for the village?
That is myself, but as our attorneys pointed out, this is an inappropriate forum to be having those types of discussions.
We've already had this discussion. Ryan sat there and said, yep, we're gonna work on it, we're gonna get it, he's got 3 months to get it. That was 5 months ago. Why should the village have to pay for that when the state is started saying in February of 22, that's when you have to take the class?
I'm sorry.
Anytime before that, all you had to do is pay for your tests.
But I'm not able to answer any of those questions in this meeting tonight. So, any other comments outside of that topic?
So how do I get an appointment to speak with somebody from HR about it?
Scott, I mean, is that?
Yeah, I mean, we're still addressing an issue that has to deal with an individual that is on payroll here. As far as I'm concerned,
And my point is, he was never qualified for the job when he was hired.
okay, point taken.
So we're just gonna ignore it?
Well, I'm not gonna have the conversation here.
Okay, where can we have this conversation then?
I don't know where we will have this conversation.
I'd like to know what's gonna go on with it, because we're paying a man to do a job that he's not qualified to do,
Well, respectfully.
according to his job description. He has to have a CDL license.
Point taken. That's about as much as I can give you.
You're also talking about a man who used his own personal vehicle to do the job. I've witnessed it and watched him do it. I don't know why you got it out for Max.
I don't have it out for
Okay,
Max.
then drop it
I
like
have
you
it out
always said.
that it's my money.
Please, everybody, we discussed that this is not a topic of discussion for this evening. I would appreciate everybody's cooperation in that. Thank you.
Is something going to be done about it? You can answer that question.
There's nothing to be said. This is a moot point. This is,
So you're not even gonna look into it? As head of HR? And this being an HR issue?
I'm gonna defer all comments to our attorney.
Is our attorney gonna talk to Max about it? Apparently his supervisor, it didn't do any good.
there's nothing further. I mean, point's taken. It's in the minutes now.
It was in the minutes back in October,
You brought it up again tonight,
and I'm gonna bring it up the next meeting too,
and that's your right.
until
Well,
something
we don't-
is done.
We are not at liberty to talk about an employee at the moment.
Okay, when are we gonna be at liberty to discuss it?
With it, this we stuff,
It's my money.
You're not in charge of the employees here.
It's my money. When he goes and finally, if he does get his license, it was said at a meeting and put in the minutes that we're gonna pay for it. I can see paying for the license, not the schooling. He's had plenty of opportunity to get it without having to pay for schooling.
Point taken.
So, in spirit of Robert Rules of Order, we are required to get public comment, 3 minutes per individual. We have exceeded that. I will, concede the floor to you if you have any other topics
Nope, I'm
outside of
good.
that. If not, we do need to move on.
Move on.
Okay, thank you. Any other public comment? Which I'm hearing none, so we'll close that at 6:05. Consent agenda. Is there an approval for the consent agenda, including the minutes from February 11th, accounts payable, investment report, revenue and expenditure report, and the balance sheet? Were there any questions from those items?
I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
McEwen,
Here.
Schoenborg,
Yes.
Stanfield,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Schulte.
Yes. Okay, we'll move on to reports. First up this evening is the police report.
Good evening, everybody. For this month, for the past month of February, we responded to a total of 17 incidents. We had 48 traffic stops. Of those traffic stops, we wrote 20 citations. For the total incidents, we had 2 total arrests. To highlight some of those calls that went on, we responded to the Memorial Park for suspicious subject who ended up having 3 warrants. He posted bond on site and he was released. For the other arrests, we initiated a traffic stop at the party store. The driver had local warrants and he was lodged on those. And one outside of the village call that we helped with, we assisted the county units with a PI accident at Hazlitt and Corey. Driver fled upon police contact. The driver would end up being PRT'd. Other than that, it was a pretty slow month. Summer months are coming around, so just be attentive to people that's going on, especially in the village at night. Seeing things suspicious, just call. But other than that, if y'all got any questions or anything.
Do you mind filling in the council on the personnel changes you were telling me about?
So I am going on baby leave in about 2 weeks, and there's gonna be a guy coming out here, his name's William Vincent. He's gonna be taking my spot for a little bit. And I'm not 100% sure about other movements going on right now, so I won't comment on them until they actually happen. But you may be having some more personnel changes out here with 2 additional people. So I'll keep you updated on that, but
Will you come back?
I'm not sure that I am coming back at this point,
Okay.
but I should be back for a little bit after baby leave. But I have enjoyed my time here. Thank you all for making it so pleasant for me.
We've enjoyed
Thanks
having
for
you.
everything that you do.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate you.
And congratulations again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Upcoming book.
Any other questions for our deputy? Okay, if not, we'll move on to the DPW report.
Well, plowing and salting, hopefully done for the season. Not anticipating anything, but who knows what Michigan holds. Pretty good year, no major breakdowns. Really only had one. I was able to get that fixed myself. Had to come in on a paid day off, but whatever. Iron removal plant, still working on funding opportunities. Still working with the USDA just to model out a loan, just so we know where we stand on numbers, if it's something that's even gonna be feasible or not. Just wanted to keep everybody updated on that. So we are filling potholes when weather permits. We started today. Tomorrow morning we'll get 5 more tons of cold patch to keep filling the holes. So anybody out there has a pothole, don't be afraid to report it, call it in. We'll address it as soon as possible. Streetlights. The streetlights in town are owned and operated by Detroit Edison. You can call us to report it. It's a little bit difficult though, because you can't just say lights out by my house. We don't know what light that is. So Detroit Edison on their website, they just revamped it. Anybody can go in to the Detroit Edison website and report an outdoor lighting problem. They have an interactive map. You scroll through the town, click on the green dot, simulating what light pole it is. They ask you like 3 or 4 questions. Is the light out? Is it flickering? Can you tell if it's broke? And you hit submit. So, you know, summertime coming up, everybody's gonna be outside more. So if you notice a street light out, it's not ours, but, you know, Detroit Edison, they're really good at getting them fixed.
Could you forward a link to that, to the Z Solutions, so we can have that added to our website?
I can.
Thank you.
Brush season is starting up. Just asking people to follow the rules. You know, we're gonna do the best we can. It's starting to come out now, so we did pick up some today. We're just trying to keep on it, you know. So get the brush out there and we'll get it picked up. During spring cleanup, please no bags, including the paper bags that they sell at all the hardware stores. We don't want them. No plastic bags either. If we have to have a plastic bag out there, it's gonna sit. We do have rules we have to follow, and so I'm just asking no bags. If you have leaves, we're gonna do a couple leaf pickups this spring. We'll vacuum them up, but don't put them in bags. And then, spring's coming. A lot of people are gonna be out doing landscaping, gardening, additions to their houses. For any digging in your yard, including with a shovel, call in a misdig. It is free, does not cost you anything. But we have a lot of underground fiber optic in this town, and the lines that connect your house to the internet are generally buried 2 inches. And you cut that through with a shovel, with no misdig, they're charging you for it. Put a misdig in, that's all I ask. You can call 811, you can get on their website, anybody can do it. So, it's cheap, don't cost you anything, but if you damage something without a misdig, you're gonna wish you had one in. So, that's about all I got for right now. Any questions? Just, call or email me.
Mistake charges
No.
on your private
For a
property?
for a private locate, they do. If you want them to find like a gas line that goes from your house that you installed out to your garage, they charge for that. Yes. But to locate the Consumers Energy gas line from the gas main out by the road that feeds your house, anywhere that you have a meter, that line is free. So, yeah, private locate, they do charge.
Okay.
So,
Thank you, Ryan. Next up is the clerk treasurer report. Jessica.
The cameras have gone up and we have a few downstairs now, you can see there's one back here, one down the foyer and then one at our counter. The village has received $58,228.66 from the state for marijuana tax revenues. Those funds get placed in our general fund. We have begun the redevelopment rent community process, and we're currently waiting for Chris Corey to give us a review if being certified or essential is more beneficial than the other. This will also be put in the newsletter, but we did have the increases in December of 2024. It only changed the water sewer register charges. This was due to a computer error, and the usage was not increased at that time. It has been fixed. In your February 2025, the March bills reflects the correct amount. Tammy worked very diligently with BSNA to get that fixed. We have had a lot of hall rentals that seems to be going well for the most part. We have had some renters not properly clean the hall as instructed, and that could cause the renter to lose their deposit, but other than that, we've had really good turnout, and a lot of people interested in hall rentals. Got rentals for like the next few weekends.
Excellent. Any questions for Jessica? All right, we'll move on.
I got one.
Oh, go ahead.
Why didn't that notice about the water bills or the water usage upage get put in last month's bill, in the last letter we just got?
I think it was probably caught after that was sent out, or we
I'd
hadn't
be caught
gotten it
before
yet?
because we all got a raised bill. So why wasn't that already put in the newsletter?
So it's February's bills that, will have the updated rates, right?
I think
March?
Yeah,
Yeah, because it's basically 2 months behind.
The bill I just got was raised, So I called the office, like everybody else did that got a higher water bill. So why wasn't that put in? If we got a bill with the notice, why wasn't the letter with the notice, or with the bill, the upcharge? Why are we a month behind, is my question.
Yeah, I don't know.
Would have saved the office a lot of heartache, having to listen to everybody on the phone complain about the bill.
I'm sure.
Actually, I didn't get the last one, it must have been the, obviously it was missed, but it is in this newsletter.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Jessica? If not, we have, our WDDA report. Any news, Josh?
Working away on the 2 buildings. Briggs Building, we actually have water to the tenant now, so they're able to actually start paying their rent, which is good.
In which building is that?
That would be the white building, that's part of the Briggs building complex there. The Sharon's has put in the furnaces there so that the water doesn't freeze. So those are in, and the drop ceiling was ripped out of the 2 suites closest to the school so that they can, spray foam company can come in, do their stuff, plus Sharon's can finish putting in the ductwork on the 3rd suite. And they are working on closing in the garage door that's in the back of that building because it's not useful and it's an old wood door that's literally falling apart. So we're just gonna close that in, and then they're gonna do an overhang on the part of the roof that's over by the school, because currently there's no drip edge on it, so water just runs down the side of the building instead of going in the gutters like it should be, and it's causing water to infiltrate the brick on that whole north wall. So, board building, the glass, all the windows will be going in hopefully mid-April, and working with Nielsen's construction on getting that project going. So that's pretty much all my updates.
Well, I'll add to that a little bit. Here's a good place as any. I'm sure a lot of people have noticed that Johnny Gringo's is now open. For anybody who's taken notice, the old bank has been purchased, and there's a residential solar company that has moved their offices into there. So it's good to see downtown filling up. All right, any questions for Josh on the WDDA? Okay, next report is building and zoning. McKenna's not here, but they have provided their usual report. So then we will move on to NISA report. Sandra.
At our last meeting, we did discuss the renewed Webberville DDA agreement. I just wanted to double check with Josh. Did you guys get that?
Yes, yeah, Gormley wrote it up. I think either I have to sign it or we have to send to you, you guys sign, and I ratify it. But yeah, it basically is just an addendum saying that we're doing the same terms and conditions as the prior agreement.
Awesome, I appreciate that. And then the other thing I just wanted to mention was we did discuss some new training equipment that they want to be using at the station down here, since we are using it as a training station. And that would be really good because it's a larger piece of equipment that can be configured lots of ways for numerous trainings. So that was pretty much it.
Awesome. Thank you. Any questions for Sandra? Attorney reports. Scott Gould.
All right, so, last time we were here, I think I mentioned that White Rose is appealing, the circuit court decision. It's still pending at the Court of Appeals. Should hear something in the next couple of weeks. The Court of Appeals usually runs a pretty tight ship as far as timelines go. So, as soon as we get something, I'll report to the council. The one thing that kind of came up with this matter, and now that we've progressed to the Court of Appeals, is with White Rose, the property to the west of here, is it 4596? 4696?
40, I think it's 4696.
4696. With that property, in J. Rittman, White Rose, there was a conditional zoning agreement, put in place some time ago. And effectively, if the Court of Appeals, either they entertain the request by the defense to review the matter, or if they outright reject it, either one of those scenarios whereby they side with the village, we will, as a council, or you will, as a council, will still have to address the conditional zoning agreement, in that effectively that conditional zoning agreement had language in it that said if there's a violation of this agreement, it's null and void, the agreement's null and void. I'm just planting that seed now, so that way when the time comes, you understand what we're gonna be doing and discussing. Ultimately, at the prerogative of the council, if you wanna continue the conditional zoning, or if you want to void it, that decision will have to be made down the road. If you are inclined to keep the conditional zoning in place, then we need to recognize it formally, to avoid any kind of waiver by the village. And what I mean is, I don't wanna get in a situation where, in the future, if there's a subsequent violation, White Rose is able to say, well, the village didn't, they weren't concerned about the last violation, so therefore, we don't have to live by these terms. I just don't want that to go to the wayside, but that's down the road a little bit, so, that's that matter. Eagle reached out to me, I believe Mr. Jones as well, last week. It sounds like they are in the closing steps of their enforcement action. I believe we're just waiting on a consent order as the official term. We thought we would have it by today.
That's what I was told, but
Yeah.
it never showed.
Never showed, so stay tuned on that. They would not, as I tried to pry into them to figure out what may be in this document, they wouldn't even give me an edge, so we just had to sit and wait for it to show up. One last piece, there was a garnishment that, some confusion here at the office for an employee. The problem was, the law firm or the court, one of the two, put the wrong case number down, causing a little bit of confusion. Just in case anyone was wondering what was going on with the garnishment, the error was committed either by the 55th District Court or by Stanger Law Firm, but I just wanted, in case anyone was concerned about that matter, because with garnishments, if we don't disclose in a timely fashion, the village could be liable for the debt owed, so. Other than that, that's all I have to report at the moment, so.
Thank you, Scott.
I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
Only because I'm late to the party. What is this White Rose and what is this piece of property that's concerned?
You know where the Carter, well, it used to be Carter Lumber?
Yep.
Okay, so Jay Rittman owns a company called White Rose. White Rose is the entity that actually owns that parcel now.
Okay.
And so back, I have to look at the date, but going back maybe 2015-ish, Mr. Rittman wanted to change the use of that parcel from effectively a lumberyard retail to an M1 district where it gives them a lot more freedom to do whatever you want on the property.
Okay.
But we still restricted certain uses. We said no outdoor storage. I think we limited certain types of manufacturing there, things like that. I can get you a copy of it for you to review. Anyway, that agreement lives on, and effectively, we just had a protracted litigation over outdoor storage with White Rose, which we have so far prevailed on. And that conditional zoning agreement was the cornerstone of the argument as to whether or not Jay could use that parcel in such a way that he had outdoor storage. So that's the background, but I can get you whatever you need.
No, that's fine, that just gets me caught up a little bit, because I know they were here at one point too, at one of the meetings, so I was just trying to get my head around what it is.
Yeah, I think initially that was zoned as either B1 or B2 general purpose, and going to M1 is basically industrial, so.
Are they the same ones that wanted to be a grow operation there?
Yes.
At one time.
Okay, okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions for our attorney? Okay. If not, we will move on to engineer reports. Bruce?
Yeah, so I've been working with Mr. Jones and Mr. Schulte to try and identify some potential water and paving projects for the village. either for the upcoming season or future years. And so we took a look at a number of things, and I've got cost estimates for each one of them on the front. But if you turn the document over to the first plan, this shows a potential connection, water main connection between the end of Apple Lane, which is currently a dead end run, and the school water main, which is also a dead end run. And it's beneficial not to have dead ends in a water system for a couple of reasons. You know, one of the main ones is that you get less flow in a dead end run, and you know, you collect more debris and so forth inside the main. But then it also offers kind of a redundancy of service in case one segment of water main needs to be worked on, then the water can feed from another direction. So this was this Apple Lane dead end was something that we looked at, and one possibility was connecting it to the school's water main, which I understand is currently a private main, but could be made public and work, you know, if that were to, you know, be selected as a project.
Real quick, Bruce. I did meet with the school about this project. We discussed either the possibility of taking ownership of that water main, because we don't own it, or coming into a partnership where they still own it, but we operate and maintain it. If they grant us the easement along their property line to connect Apple Lane 2. They are fully on board. I did speak with one homeowner already on Apple Lane. They are on board. The other homeowner is still away for the winter, so I would meet with him probably in April. These are just feasibility studies, so I don't want anybody to panic. We're just seeing if the project's feasible. If they're not feasible, we're not gonna waste time on it, because we do have to get easements here. So far, 2 out of the 3 players are fully on board. The school was very excited over this possibility, because the water quality going into the Spartan Center is horrible. So this would really improve that situation. And like Bruce said, it would give us a loop, so we would have a redundant water main over there, as opposed to it just ending at the end of Apple Lane that I have to flush every 3 months. So that's where this came about.
Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt.
No.
And I'll add to that a little bit, just so the council's aware. I had asked Bruce and Ryan to meet on this, just to look at, you know, some preliminary budgets for projects like Bruce was saying, and trying to figure out, you know, kind of the best bang for buck projects. Obviously, we're not committed to any of these, but I think ultimately the discussion ended up at where can we eliminate dead ends, because that is generally where the majority of our water quality complaints come from. You know, it's where sediment gets trapped, it's where it ends up going, so that is the essence of all these projects that I'll let Bruce keep going.
Okay, no, thank you. And then, there were 2 other options that we looked at for creating a loop with Apple Lane. One of them was predominantly on the school property, and the other one was across the property to the north to connect to the main and Pardee. And so, again, both of those would require easements from several of the property owners there. And in general, those connections were longer than what the school would take, so would be, you know, somewhat more expensive. Well, I guess one of them is actually shorter. So those are 2 options. And then we sort of looked at the east neighborhood area. You know, there's a couple of dead ends there. There's one on Epley, there's one on Jackson, and there's one on Detroit. So the thought was, it would be good if we could connect all 3 of those together, possibly have a connection to Franklin Street, and then potentially loop all the way back down to Oak Street. That particular connection would be challenging just because the township owns some property along the back of those lots that front on Oak Street. We would need some easements, but the whole area is kind of within a wetland and would require probably directional drilling, which would be, you know, a fairly expensive thing. So the cost estimates kind of break out the different pieces of what that would cost. And then as we were looking at these, you know, it made sense to take a look at the streets as well. as long as we're in there fooling around with the water main, you know, look at replacing those older mains, upsizing them a little bit. And so those cost estimates were kind of broken out separately between the water main and, you know, doing a paving project on each one of those streets as well. And then there's no picture for this, but at the end of Main Street to the south, the water main dead ends, and then on Clark Street, which is one street to the east, that dead ends, they both dead end right at the railroad right away. And there had been a plan that LSG, Alan Boyer's previous group, had put together to connect those two endpoints together through the railroad right away. And that project ultimately didn't move forward because of issues with dealing with the railroads. The railroads are very protective of their properties and so forth, but, you know, that's a conversation that we could have with them again if, you know, we wanted to look at that project. And then I don't have a map for this either, but we looked at, you know, Main Street out here in front of the Village Hall, you know, from Grand River down to Chestnut, Walnut. You know, potentially doing a repaving project since that particular piece of Main Street is in a lot of distress, as is the parking lot across the street. So we kind of combined those two things together and came up with an estimate for what it would take to number one, to repave it, but number two, possibly, you know, replace the water main as well.
Which are, I believe, older 4-inch mains, right?
Yes.
So they're,
We have a water main that goes from Clark, runs right along the edge of our building right here, connects into South Main. Then it continues through the parking lot, through the alleyway that is now closed behind K&J Service, and it ties into South Summer Street. That's 4-inch. You know, because there's no water main on Grand River Avenue. A lot of people don't realize that, but between Clark and Summit, there is no water main out there. It's all in the back, it's in the easements. So like Sam said, we all met. We're looking for projects to do because we have to do that. We're looking for the greatest return on investment, what's gonna be best for the village. Real quick, if you don't mind, we've talked about Gramer Road in the past. I personally spoke up. I wasn't comfortable with Gramer Road getting redone because not very many village residents travel on Gramer Road. So that's how we moved into the South Main Street project. The South Main Street is far more visible, used, you know, for the summer festivals with the DDA, foot traffic. So that's how we came to the South Main Street project. In case anybody's sitting in here has a question, where'd that come from? It wasn't just out of the blue, it was something I proposed. Everybody was pretty much on board with that. So we're not gonna ignore Gramer Road, but we wanna prioritize the highest return on investment, and South Main Street would do far more for the community than South Gramer Road would. So
Yeah.
that's where we're at right now.
and additionally in the numbers, and then this will come up in our budget discussion later, but some of the figures that PEA group had put together for the South Main Street project includes repairing and repaving of the municipal lot behind the pharmacy and the municipal lot next to the party store. So there's some discussions with the DDA about sharing the burden financially of that, especially the Briggs building and the Ford building. Those parking lots are in pretty severe disrepair, and you know, if we're gonna be welcoming a lot more traffic to the town, we need to have better parking lots, so just wanted to have these numbers together. It's food for thought, so we kind of know what we're looking at. And really appreciate Bruce and Ryan taking the time to give us a picture of what we're looking at.
When you talk Gramer Road, you're talking Gramer Road South, I'm assuming.
South, yes.
And how far would you go with that?
I think we had 3 different options, I think, proposed that we were looking at.
Yeah, there's the piece between Grand River and Epley, and then there's a piece between Epley and the railroad tracks. And I think the railroad tracks are the village limit.
Yep.
Right, okay.
So last year, I think it was last year, wasn't it?
Yep.
Yeah, last year, Bruce had put together 3 different options, looking at, you know, were we gonna do the whole thing, or were we gonna break it up? So, we're not gonna ignore it. We know it's a problem. Like I said, we kinda all felt this is far more visible than out there. because the majority of the traffic out there is most likely township traffic trying to circumvent coming through town,
Other than Epley Court.
other than Appley Court, exactly. So-
Are you talking about doing underground out there or just paving?
There's
Just
no-
paving.
Yeah, there's no underground between Epley and the railroad tracks.
Yep.
So I think that the more affordable option would be, repaving from Grand River to Epley and then pulverizing and asphalt millings, from Epley to the railroad tracks. You know, it wouldn't be, a finished road, but it would be more passable.
We can maintain it, because as it stands now, we can't maintain it,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
we cold patch it, lasts for 3 days and then it's
Okay,
gone.
again, I'm not trying to reiterate stuff, but I'm just trying to learn what you guys have already discussed, so.
Yep.
I appreciate the questions.
Sorry to hijack your engineering
No,
report.
it's just, no. Jump right in. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thanks,
Any
Bruce.
questions for Bruce? Okay.
I'm in touch.
Are there any advocate reports this evening? Okay, I do not see any. So we will move on to new business. First up is to review the 2025-2026 proposed budget. So I did meet with Caitlin last Thursday to start going through a proposed budget. Tonight is just a discussion. What's in here is a draft. So the council should decide to massage any of these figures one way or the other, add, remove things. And there's still some final A and Bs to come through. Caitlin will take that and compile it for an approval for the March 24th meeting. So now is the opportunity to go through this with a fine-tooth comb and make sure that the council is satisfied with how we are budgeting. If we want, I can go through it line by line. Either that or I'll just give the highlights.
I think that with you and Caitlin and Jessica having done most of the legwork, and we've obviously looked over it, if you want to give us some highlights that you think that we might
Okay.
need.
Yeah, the highlights are admittedly short. The nice thing about having Plan Moran, and just our budget in general, it kind of makes itself in terms of, most revenues and expenditures are stable. We can just basically account for inflation, looking at prior year's numbers, so that part of it kind of makes itself. The thing that we have a little bit more, I'll say, control over, are things like capital outlay projects, which would include paving and waterworks that we just went through. So if we look at, I believe it is on page 1. Yes, page 1 towards the bottom, capital outlay. We put in the budget there $325,000. Essentially what that breaks down to is the cost of doing the South Main Street project. That's the water line replacement as well as the paving projects we talked about. So that reflects the whole amount based on the budgeted numbers PEA provided. Of course, you know, as discussions go on with the DDA, since those are our those belong to DDA parking lots, you know, that number may change a little bit depending on what portion is contributed from the DDA, if any, which is why we chose to budget for the full amount. The remainder of that $325, we set aside $30,000 for building improvements and repair to this facility. It's been noted by a number of residents, as I'm sure all of you are aware, our restrooms up here are very dated, and the facilities are lacking. Haven't gotten any quotes on what that'll be. I hope it's a lot less than 30, but I think that was a safe number to put in there. Any questions on that?
I can't bite my tongue. Caitlin and I worked a few hours, putting together a budget for the DPW. The budget numbers that I had been targeting started 2 years ago, when we purchased truck 7, which we call Big Red. We bought it used, it's a 20-year-old truck. We had a brand new truck on order that we canceled last year, when we had violations brought to the village. So we canceled that truck, so we did not have a $200,000 plus bill sit in front of us. So the plan was to limp through this past winter on hopes and prayers that nothing happened to truck 7. We got lucky. I had one breakdown, like I said, it happened at 10:30 at night. So I came in the next day, got it fixed. So our budget meetings came up. Our plan for the last 2 years was to look into getting another new to us, relatively good truck. So I put that in our budget, because I have to have equipment to provide services in the community. If I don't have plow trucks, I can't plow the roads. Don't have dump trucks, can't pick up brush, pick up leaves, all of that. Where we stand right now, with truck 4, which was our old salt truck, the salter is out of commission. It is so rusted and so old, we cannot refurb it economically. The truck itself, truck 4, that is a 2005. As of right now, the truck is red tagged by myself. It is not roadworthy. It does not have brakes. Would not pass a DOT inspection. So our plan was to put that truck in auction and hope we could get $7,500 for it to put towards getting another good used truck from the company that we got, Big Red, because they do frame up, sandblasting, repainting of the whole vehicle. Basically a new truck, but the fact of the matter is it's still 20 years old. So Caitlin and I worked on it, put it into our proposed budget. Sam met with me today to give me a heads up that he took it out. So I'm responsible to provide a service to the citizens of this community. I have to be able to do my job to provide the services that they have come to expect and that they pay for. So I don't agree with the budget. I'm sorry, I don't. So we have to have equipment to do this. Where we get money from it, or for it, you know, unfortunately the cost of everything goes up. So council's gonna have to make some tough decisions here. But as it stands right now, I can't justify putting about $5,000 into truck 4 just to get it back on the road. The truck is not worth it. So I do want people to know that's where we stand right now, equipment-wise.
I appreciate your comments, Ryan.
Yep.
And I totally hear you. So if we go back to the general fund, by adding these capital outlay projects, doing Main Street here, we actually would run a small deficit there of about $38,000, which means we would have to dip into our general fund balance. Now, right now, that balance is healthy. It's about, I believe, $300,000, which by most guidelines, that is a healthy position for us to be in. That's about 20% of our projected expenses. So, you know, if things really go south, we could afford to keep ourselves afloat for 3-4 months, right? So really what it comes down to is an affordability issue. You know, we can either choose to spend our money on improving the infrastructure of the town or more assets, right? So unfortunately, our levers to pull here are limited. We either need to increase our revenues or decrease our expenditures.
Well, what about the marijuana tax that was just refunded to us?
No, it's not a refund, it's a revenue sharing agreement from
Revenue
the state. And that just goes into our general fund, which is already accounted for. So this will be the third year that we've received that funding. So in this budget proposal, I think we had budgeted for $58,000, so we were actually pretty darn close to that number. You know, so if we look at the options here, really the only way to increase revenue short term is to increase the millage rate, which means taxes for everybody goes up. To decrease our expenditures, pretty simple. We can just not do these projects or not purchase new equipment. Since those aren't necessarily favorable options, the other options there, which aren't much better, is we can look at staffing, reducing our employee headcount, or a big one would be the police contract. As it stands, you know, we typically have the 80 hours. You know, we've gone down to 40 before, and that generally saves us about $170,000 a year. A substantial portion of money that goes a long way towards a lot of these things that we want to do. I realize that none of this is good news, but as a council, it's on us to decide what's best for this village.
We need police protection.
I'm not proposing that we can get rid of it.
I don't think we should have hired a fourth guy for the DPW. That was a pretty good bill that this village and this community, I don't believe needs. This job was done with 3 people for years. It was done just as good in my eyes. Been here a long time. A fourth person just doesn't make sense to me there. With the amount of roads that we have to plow versus Fowlerville has 5 people. They plow a little over 14 miles. They have bigger parking lots. They have a cemetery they gotta take care of. When you do the math, 4 people in this village on the DPW doesn't make sense to me.
Okay, Sam and I had this discussion earlier. My position has traditionally been considered that of a working supervisor. Okay, traditionally. I'm just gonna go back 5 years, we can go back 10, we can go back 15. Okay, the amount of work that goes just to keep our village in compliance with Eagle, 90 to 95% of my day is compliance work. I can't go out in the field and work because I have to be in front of that computer. I have to be on top of our water system and our sewer system. So, on that, I'll start with water. For many years, our water system has been neglected. There has not been a valve exercising program in place, so I've started the process of rectifying that. Last year, we purchased a valve exerciser, so that process starts this spring. You don't do it during the wintertime, you do it in the summer. That is rule number 1. So, that's gonna happen. That's gonna be a huge undertaking, because we will break valves. We will have water main breaks from it, but we cannot ignore these valves. On the sewer side of things, our sewer system is not maintained. I think it was 6 years ago, we had our SAW grant. The sewer system was jetted in some parts. They did not clean our whole sewer system. So, this summer, I have to start cleaning our sewer system. That is a 2-man job. 1 man cannot do that. So, like I said, to keep us in compliance, that's me. I'm the operator in charge. That is my responsibility. That is nothing that I'm going to do past 3 o'clock. I work a 40-hour work week. We don't charge overtime in the village. We charged very little this year. We had a discussion, Sam and I did, about it. So we don't charge too much overtime. We lower the manpower, overtime rates are gonna go through the roof. Sewer cleaning will not get done. I can tell you that right now, because I don't have the manpower to do that. Traditionally speaking, I understand it, but the village has changed. We now own land out in the industrial park that we have to maintain out there as well. Our lagoon system has doubled in size compared to when it was a 2 to 3 man DPW. We did not have 4 ponds, we had 2 ponds. Now we have 4. The maintenance and upkeep that I have to do on that starting this summer, just to keep us in compliance, we are going to be replacing just under 3,000 feet of fence in-house. We can't afford to contract that out. So that's just to keep us in compliance, because right now the whole west side of our wastewater system is out of compliance, and if Eagle wanted to, they could drop the hammer on us for that. But I told them I have a plan. This spring, I have to put that plan into motion. I cannot do that with 2 or 3 guys in my department, because the water system doesn't stop, the streets don't stop, maintenance of our other properties don't stop. Everybody in the DPW, I have to lean on and count on. I can't do this job alone. Everybody wants to talk traditionally, and that's why our system is where it's at. Because traditionally, they did the bare minimum. I'm not gonna sit here and throw people under the bus. I'm not gonna badmouth people. Traditionally, they did not have to do what we are required to do now as a system. So I understand your concerns on that. I do, I get it. The citizens of this town want work to be completed, these projects to happen, because when these projects happen, we're involved in them. We can't hold up contractors when they're ready to make a connection into our water main. If I say I don't have manpower, we're getting charged. So it all goes together. This isn't 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago. This is now, and it's only getting worse. More and more is getting piled on us. More so on my shoulders, just from the state of Michigan side of stuff. We have to be in compliance on everything. Whether it's something as simple as the bucket truck, just to change out banners, we have to be in compliance there. Never work. Okay? So I understand where you're coming from. You know, nobody wants to raise taxes, we don't. You know, my taxes just got raised at my house. Nothing I can do about it.
Anybody that lives in this community can already tell you that we're overtaxed for what we get.
I'm
You all
trying
pay
to
them.
change that.
We all pay them.
That
We
is
pay a
something
lot
I
of
am trying
taxes
to
in this
change.
village for what we get.
Yep.
So all the taxes, it's just not gonna go well with anybody. And we work for all the taxpayers, as far as I'm concerned. Everybody in here is working for the taxpayer.
That's exactly what we
So
are.
we've
We
gotta
are
find
public
that
servants.
happy medium somehow.
Yep.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but it just doesn't, I just don't see 4 people. I mean, if you've got 3 good men, then you got 3 good men. If you don't, then somebody needs to be replaced.
So let me ask you this question, okay? I was sick yesterday. That leaves 2 guys,
You know,
okay? What's gonna happen with 2 guys?
somebody's gotta pick up the slack. It's no
You can't.
different on my job. If I'm sick, they gotta pick up the slack when I'm not there.
Compliance issues, we can't do it. We had an employee 5 days in the hospital, okay? You can't do it and stay in compliance with the state of Michigan, with what the state of Michigan says we have to do. So now we're contracting it out. So that's gonna come out of our budget. So I understand what you're saying, and I greatly appreciate it, so,
All right.
good dialogue.
So to put this in a little bit more perspective, you know, when we talk about the tax situation, Caitlin and I ran some rough numbers to understand what 1 millage point means to our revenues. So 1 millage point is about $75,000. And our current millage rate is 13.2. We're able to go up to 15. So you figure that's, you know, about $130,000, you know, if we were to max that out. A lot of people ask, well, what does that mean for my tax bill? It's really, really hard to say because everybody's taxable value is different. I can tell you for me, personally, with my situation, you know, I'd like to think that I'm somewhere in the average. You know, I'm gonna be people higher and lower. It's probably be about $40 a month doing that. So just to put some numbers around what that means.
Taxes are gonna be too high.
Yeah, I agree, these are the difficult decisions that we all signed up to be responsible for making. So we need some sort of feedback, to give to Caitlin, for what we will propose for approval at our next meeting. Yes, sir.
Just a quick question, is the water rates gonna go up again in another month?
We will have to talk to the Michigan Rural Water representative, Joe. We can run those rate studies for free, basically as often as we want. Our discussion, I think in November, when we raised rates last, we talked about doing it again in March, March, April for budget season, so I don't know if they're gonna go up. We have to look at the rate study and see.
I thought that's what he mentioned when he was here.
Yep.
That they bump them up, what did they go up, 18, 19, 20%?
I forget what the exact percentage number was.
And then in April, bumping up again another 4 or 5%, he said.
Yeah, I would hope that it's not that high.
Well, I would too.
The reason why it was so high last time is because we'd gone years without an increase, so we were playing catch up. So like I said, we just have to do the water rate study and see, does it have to be 1%, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe it's 0, I doubt it. But hopefully, to make ourselves whole there, it won't be a lot.
Any idea in the foreseeable future when that'll happen?
We can probably get Joe to do that rate study, probably takes him a week or so to put that together.
I was planning on having a discussion with him next week, because I'll be with him in Traverse City at the Rural Water Conference. So I was gonna have a conversation with him about it, to see where we stood on that.
Yeah.
Because I thought he was very specific
Yeah,
about in November, the rates would jump up,
Yeah.
and then again in April, they'd go up some more.
and it was April because it's our fiscal year. You are
Right, that's
supposed to
standard
do-
operating procedures.
You're supposed to do a very, like Sam said, you're supposed to do a very small rate increase every single year. Eagle expects, because I have to turn in, our asset management plan, we have to turn in capital outlay, because Eagle fully expects water systems to be constantly improving. So that's where this comes from, so. Like Sam said, the last one was so large because we hadn't done one for 5 years. So we're trying to get it knocked down to where you almost don't even realize there was a rate increase. That's how it should be.
Yeah, good luck on that.
I know.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to get to.
So I would be surprised if we could have a rate study done by next meeting, but certainly
Yeah, it won't be next meeting.
if we move fast, maybe the first meeting in April, if not the second. So,
Seems Leroy Township is going to raise.
yeah,
I got the paperwork in.
yeah, every year, 3 to
I'm still
5%.
trying to figure out what it is Leroy Township does for this village.
Yeah. So, I think the immediate task at hand, with these budgets, as it is, doing the Main Street project with the parking lots, it's, I would say, affordable, but barely. It does mean that we would forego a dump truck. So, those projects those things being similarly priced, it's, to maintain a good standing, it's, which would the council rather see right now? Do we want to improve water and roads, or do we want to have another dump truck?
Have a thought, because I know you guys looked at this once before, but this is just a thinking out loud exercise, but I know there is, cause I've been doing a lot of work on finding grants. USDA is one of them that they do a lot of rural loans, just like what he's saying, for equipment as well. I don't know the specifics of it, but I know they do them, and they're a lower interest loan, so maybe that's a way to fix that scenario, is maybe looking to seeing if there's a possibility. I mean, you guys could continue the budget how it is, and then look at the possibility of what that loan payment would look like, you know, and do an amendment, or, you know, you might have enough in your motor pool to pay for that. You know, say it's $10,000 a year for the next 10 years to pay for that truck.
Yeah.
Cause I mean, as long as the interest rate's decent, you can always pay off a loan early and save a bunch of interest on it too. So I mean, you might go do both.
Probably a lot easier to get a loan on a vehicle than it is a road.
That's very factual. Unfortunately.
It's a lot easier to repossess a vehicle than it is a road.
Yeah.
Is that all the old truck needs, is just brakes?
And a dump box. And I'm not sure about the frame. 2 years ago, sorry, we had, I don't know why, they only did one side. We had the rear leaf springs break on it. So instead of replacing them in pairs, they only replaced the one side.
Right.
The other side, it's scary to look at, you know, to say the least. So, we'll see. I mean, we'll figure it out. That's the name of the game, you know.
Well, I think the roads and infrastructure needs to be number one, and then the truck, we need to look into loans. I mean, obviously, we don't wanna pay outright for the truck, but there's gotta be a way that you can get a loan somehow to make monthlies on it, and like Josh just said, pay it off early when and if the money's laying there.
There is, that puts us into a new truck, which
Yeah.
right now they're about 18 months out and well over 200,000, so. But, you know, that's the name of the game and we'll have to figure it out,
I
so.
understand it's 100,000, but if it lasts 20 years,
Yeah,
if it's taken care of.
yep. So,
Right.
we'll find
Ever
it.
think about looking into a lease?
Generally speaking, on salt trucks, they frown upon that because of what salt does to them. So that's very difficult to do.
State does it all the time, every year.
Smaller municipalities, that's what, so. I can look into it, but I'm just saying
I
that
mean, the state of Michigan doesn't own anything anymore.
they
They lease them all.
have a lot more trucks than us. So they play nice with them.
You know, that might be part of the my deals too, is they might, cause obviously part of the my deals is the state's buying power, so there might
When-
actually be a lease program through them.
When Brad and I looked at it with the truck that we had on order, it was purchase only.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna obviously explore, you know, depending on what they decide with the budget, and that will dictate my next move. But yeah, I'll definitely keep that in mind.
Yeah. So, before I forget, the other highlight worth mentioning here in the motor pool is we did leave $30,000 in there, with the idea that we may need to invest in snow removal equipment. As many of you know, historically, and I'll say at least 25 years, as a courtesy to the downtown businesses, we have kept the sidewalks clear. Typically that's from along Grand River, from Elm Road down to the school, both sides, and the four corners. A couple of years ago, the piece of equipment that we had for that broke. It was gonna cost more to fix it than the thing was worth. And since then, the DDA has been, well, for 1 year, this past winter, contracted a local company for snow removal. There's been some question as to whether or not that contract will be renewed. It very well may, but I think there's been some question about it, so I know the DDA is budgeted as well as the council for the possibility of if we return to removing the snow ourselves internally. So then we'll have to, if that decision is made, then Ryan and I will have to start discussions again along with the council of what piece of equipment is appropriate for that. Not a discussion we need or should have tonight, but that is the highlight there, that there is some capital asset money in motor pool. put folks on the spot, but since I'm not hearing anything, let's go around the room and I need feedback as to what to tell Plant Moran and Caitlin in terms of what we want the budget to look like. So,
I'll start.
thank you.
I'm okay with doing the two projects, parking lot and the road out here, since it's definitely very used. The library patrons also use it as well, so on that, I'm gonna say I'm good with what we have proposed for that.
I think that doing out here is really important. Obviously, when anybody is coming here, they have to drive there, they're using the parking lots. We all hear the complaints. I think that needs to be a main thing. I know that, Ryan, I'm hearing what you're saying,
Look at it.
and it's really hard. But if we can look into what Josh just suggested and go that route, I think it would be better to get a brand new rather than going and getting a used, because then we're just looking at parts again. I don't know how long, a warranty would be, probably not long, but it's still a new vehicle versus us putting that money out for a used. And the way you keep the vehicles, it's gonna look like it's new all the time anyway.
Agreed. We need to get started on the water. I mean,
Water's important.
a little bit every year that we can do,
Yeah.
we need to do it. And definitely look into possibly getting a new truck and making payments on it.
Yeah.
Maybe Ryan can look into some grants and loans.
I'm already working with the USDA Rural Development Office,
Okay.
so I'll look into that, see what's available there. We'll figure it out, that's what we have to do.
We gotta get started on the water though.
Yeah.
Mike?
Infrastructure's important, there's no doubt about it. I mean, do I think this section of road is worse than others? No, but you gotta start somewhere, so you gotta go infrastructure, and like I said, we're just gonna have to try and figure out how to get him a truck, whether it's a really good used one somewhere or whatever. Gotta find out how to do it.
Yeah.
Raising taxes for everybody, I don't believe is the answer either, so.
And it sounds like the general consensus is that we don't want to make any drastic, budget cuts in terms of reducing a police contract or,
Correct,
downsizing our staff.
correct.
I don't think we need to put any more staff on anywhere by any means, I mean, I think you're capped out there.
Okay. And, with this infrastructure project, by no means are we necessarily committed yet to, this Main Street project, but, this $325,000 in capital outlay, you guys take a look at the numbers that BEA Group put together, and if there's a consensus that that money is better spent on a different infrastructure project, we can still do that. It's just budgeting for what we're gonna spend.
I think it's really important we're hearing the people and we're going there first.
It's been a great discussion. I know it was a little painful, but I think I had pretty good direction. Jessica as well, how to respond to Caitlin, so unless there's any other comments on this draft budget, we can move on.
I would like to say one thing, because it is related to this. I'm taking my classes, as you all know, and I took, part of it was budgeting, and they actually brought this up, and they said, we're all going through very painful budget cuts right now, but everyone does need to remember that the infrastructure is so important, and everybody talked about it in there, that is the main thing that they are all putting first.
Appreciate that. Okay, so the next Band-Aid to rip off is our parking ordinance. So I brought this to the council last meeting or the meeting before. I requested that everybody take a look at our existing parking ordinance. Mike, I know you're kind of playing catch up here. But the past few months, we have had a number of issues with parking, particularly overnight parking. Talked to a lot of the businesses downtown, and I think they all were on the same page that something ought to be done, some sort of enforcement. And essentially, we do have a parking ordinance. The two things that we are lacking to enforce this is, one, somebody to enforce it, and two, is a fee schedule. So the ordinance as it is today, it is in our packets, that's chapter 70, 71, and 72. It's a lot of words, it really gets into a lot of detail of when and where you can and can't park. I think there's a lot in here that could be updated, particularly the fact that we have since redone North Main Street since this ordinance was adopted. So tonight is really just a discussion of what the council would like to see in terms of changes to the existing ordinance, as well as who we should be tasking with enforcement and adopting the fee schedule. So based on this discussion, I will be able to bring that to Chris Corey with McKenna, and he'll edit any changes, and hopefully for our next meeting or our April meeting, come prepared with a recommendation for us to adopt and approve. So with that said, I think probably the easiest place to start is enforcement. It's really got two options. We can either keep this internal with our DPW, or we can ask Ingham County Sheriff to be our enforcement mechanism.
And just to add, and I don't know if this current is something that you guys would have to probably get information, but I know prior when I've been around for about 3, maybe 4 parking enforcement rounds. It's been a constant thing over about a 15-year span. Seems like usually it gets brought up when new council members come on.
I didn't do it.
No, you did not. But prior, when Ingham County used to ticket, the money went 100% to Ingham County. It did not come back to the Village of Webberville. They got no money of that at all. And as far as I knew, is they didn't have the right to give a fine. It was a general that the sheriff's department had their own parking fines in place based on, I don't know what it was based on. I know there was a schedule of fees. It was something Ingham County did. Because originally, I think the second time it came into play, it was $25 if you're over 2 hours on run over, and then the next time it was like 2 years later, it was $50. So, we used to downtown. A lot of people would call it VIP parking, that you just paid the fine and then you just left the ticket in there for the rest of the day. But yeah, that's the knowledge of that. I guess that's came up a lot. The last time it came up, it was mainly directed from Fool's Gold being upset that there was no parking downtown. And when that happened, it stopped. It became a ghost town downtown. It destroyed every bit of the momentum that we were carrying. It stopped on its tracks. And it was that was again the 2-hour parking that was happening, and unfortunately it became, if you were 2 hours and 1 minute, they were, nothing to be negative towards the Ingham County Sheriff, but there's not a ton for them to do. So they were more observant of it, and I know the village council directed them to be very heavy-handed with it. And that's the only concern I have with the downtown area is we're starting to fill up and we're starting to do better things. I know parking is gonna be a problem, and I know we've had a couple issues. Mostly it's just been overnight parking has been the issue. But I think I would like to keep that in mind with any parking ordinances that come into place and enforcement, because I don't wanna see, we've got a good momentum coming, and it's starting to build. I mean, downtown is actually looking busy all the time now,
Yeah.
which is phenomenal, and I love it, but I don't wanna end up having it be the opposite.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna have that discussion now, appreciate the history lesson on that, Josh. My opinion on just general times and locations is I agree the 2-hour limitation, I think, is counterproductive to what we're trying to do downtown, and, you know, generally, if it's not broken, don't fix it. I don't think that we've really had any issues with, hey man, you've been parked here for 4 or 5 hours. I mean, those are people who are going about the business, patronizing our local businesses and doing business in town. The main issues have been with overnight parking. I mean, even right now, in our municipal lot over there, we've got probably 2 or 3 vehicles that, you know, there was snow on them for a while. So it's not just overnight, they were there for days and likely weeks. The overnight is also an issue for clearing snow in the winter. And just general courtesy and safety hazard associated with that. So personally, I don't think we need to do 2-hour parking anywhere. I think it's just as simple as no overnights. Put time restrictions on it. It's either burdensome to whoever's enforcing it, or it's just generally counterproductive.
So basically the overnight, I mean, maybe something happened that it broke. They gotta wait for a paycheck, social security check, or wait around to get towing. I mean, if they're just parking there because they can, that's something different. Then they need a notice put on their vehicle. But if it's one of our residents that, hey, it broke down, give me a day or 2, I would hope our village would be compassionate and say, yeah, okay, you got a day or 2.
Yeah, and those are, you know, I think with this, we gotta go slow and take these things as they come. You know, I think the low-hanging fruit is the overnight parking, and as time goes on, be it 6 months from now or 6 years from now, if there's a need or desire to go back to a 2-hour time restriction,
Yeah, we
all
can-
these things.
Yeah, we can revisit that at a later
Yeah.
date if it becomes, you know, burdensome, so. I mean, but for now, it seems like everything seems to be working out, it's just, you get the occasional overnight.
Few things. One, the overnight in town, but also on street side parking.
Mhm.
Just this winter alone, we did have a couple instances where we had to be, I can't even express how careful we had to be to try to keep our truck on the road
Mhm.
because there was people parked on the side of the road. And if our big trucks, we fall off the side of that road, a lot of times we get stuck.
Mhm.
So one, the overnight parking on the side of the road.
Yep.
Question directed to the law enforcement official sitting here. I have seen like on the side of the
Music where we
expressway.
don't care.
He's like, do whatever you want. What are the orange tags that will be placed on a car that's sitting on the side of the expressway? Is that a ticket or a notice saying, hey, we've checked it, move it?
Yeah, that's notice 24 hours.
Okay.
And they basically said that if you don't move it 24 hours,
So I think we
I'm
should,
put on there, it's,
Can we work with something like that?
I would look for something
24-hour
like that
notice?
because of the fact, one, we have apartments.
Mhm.
You know, so we have a resident, they have company or whatever, they gotta park somewhere.
Mhm.
So how are we gonna dictate that? You know,
Right, right.
The residents that live in the apartments upstairs might have to, create like a parking pass that they put on their car. That way we know, hey, that's a resident's car,
Mhm.
okay? And then 2, we have an establishment that serves alcoholic drinks.
Mhm.
Have a few too many,
Mhm.
you get a ride home, what about that car sitting there?
So,
you know.
my
So I want-
proposal to that would be for this lot, which is larger, allow overnight parking for no more than one consecutive night.
Exactly.
So that way, our businesses that do serve alcohol, they can direct their
Yep.
patrons to, hey, you know, I know what you're doing here tonight,
Get it over there,
park your car
You know,
over there, so you know, you're not
and then
driving.
like what, all of them seen it, an orange tag on a car on the side of the expressway.
Yep.
You know,
And give
Hey.
them 24 hours.
There's just
we've
one
noticed your
550
car is sitting, you know, we've noticed that your car is sitting here, you gotta move it around, you know. I do not wanna see us come down with a heavy hand instantly, you know, none of us are gonna sit out there with a stopwatch.
No.
You know, that's not the spirit, and I want everybody to know that's not the spirit of this discussion.
I personally think it should be no overnight parking on side streets,
There you go.
but you gotta put signage up, you're gonna spend money on signage. You can't just sit here and put it in a newsletter, because a lot of these newsletters go to the property owner,
Not the tenant.
but the tenants don't have any clue. So it's something you gotta put signage up. And then the other irritating one, and I know part of it's because our driveways are so short, but parking over the sidewalk when people are trying to walk is just a pain.
Yeah.
So no over sidewalk parking, no overnight parking on the side roads. Downtown, you get overnight for one night. If you're not gone the next day, then there's consequences.
Yeah, and the sidewalk one, we've dealt with a few times, and I know McKenna does enforce that, because that's, it's not,
That's an ADA compliant.
yeah, it's an ADA ordinance, so
Yep.
that would be separate from parking, but I agree with you on the side streets.
There's a guy that walks around town in the summer with his cane. He knows his route. He's got his steps counted. He knows his route. He comes up and there's a car parked across the sidewalk. That's just wrong. It's rude.
Yeah, and I don't know how many more signs we would need, because I think all of our roads coming in there's signs that are no parking on village streets between 3 AM and 6 AM, I think it is.
Yeah, I can't remember exactly the wording on it. I mean,
Something like that.
But
Whatever we enforce, you gotta word it. I mean, you gotta
Yeah.
put signage up in the word
Yeah,
itself.
you gotta notify people.
yeah, we talked, just like what Ryan said, me and Sam talked about this too, you know, you have 6 apartments downtown, you know, for doing a parking pass or having a placard or something that they can put in, that would give a number to the DPW, that they can look up and know the person's contact number, so if they need to call them and have them move, they can. I think that would be a viable thing, because I know like my building, I don't have a rear entrance, so like they have to park in this parking or on Grand River, and I mean, if they come in, one of my guys, one of my renters works nights, so like, or he works till 3rd shift, or 2nd shift, or whatever it is, and so he gets home like super early in the morning, where there's not a soul on Grand River, so it would seem weird for him to have to park like somewhere else besides in front of the building, because he's usually up fairly early in the morning and then back on again.
Well, obviously, it's, in the winter, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Or not, when in the summer, it's not a big deal. It's the
Yeah.
winter when the biggest
Right.
issue is.
winter's when it becomes a huge problem.
Yeah.
So,
And I usually, like, even for my tenants, I actually will be like, hey, we're getting a lot of snow, don't park on Grand River. Like, I usually am very good about letting them know that. And hopefully, once we get the Ford project going, I'm hoping to get a variance from the village to allow us to do parallel parking along Summit Street, because we can get quite a few spots in there, where McKenna originally said we were gonna have to put green space there. But I think it's served better, because you get probably 4 or 5 spots right there, right along the Ford building, and then behind the Ford building, we'd probably end up having that either paved or just, crushed asphalt, and have parking back there too.
Even if those are like
Help alleviate some.
loading zones for if somebody brings in a caterer.
Right, yeah, I mean, leave by the garage door open, but everything else could be
Yeah.
some sort of parking back there. More parking is always good, and then eventually when we find a bunch of money to fix the drain issue on the parking lot across the street, then we'll have additional parking.
I have to find a designated handicap spot, parking spot there on Grand River.
we have to go through the ADA on that, we will have to count our total number of available parking spots. Can't remember the formula off the top of my head, and we gotta provide X number of spots,
Then there has to be a bunch of curb cutting.
And we gotta make sure all our corners are cut. We'll have to check to see, because I don't know it off the top of my head, so I don't wanna quote the wrong number. We will have to check to see the linear feet of curb before you have to have an access ramp,
Yeah,
so.
yeah, because I know we looked at that years ago, and that was the problem, is it was, because when they put the, like, peninsulas in,
Yep.
they stick way out, and that was a safety reason that they did that, but in order to make ADA, they would have to rip those back up, and they'd have to be reconfigured. So, and when they originally did it, that's where they found it was best to put the handicap parking spots in the parking lot, because there'd be no barrier, it'd be barrier-free for them to,
Barrier-free access.
yeah, to access that.
Okay, so it sounds like the consensus is just moving to no overnights, get rid of the 2-hour restrictions, and some sort of carve out or special provision for a parking pass for, tenants, residents who are in the downtown area with limited parking.
This isn't a vote issue, right? This is what's just going to Chris Corey.
It's just a discussion
Yep,
of
that's
what we
what I
want
thought.
McKenna
Yep.
to create for us.
That's what I thought.
Yep.
And no parking on side streets? What's that?
Yeah, I think no parking on side streets whatsoever.
Do we wanna do whatsoever, or most cities and communities have like a winter time, it's like November, I don't know if it's November 1 necessarily, but it's for the months where snow is likely.
So November to April.
Some, most communities have a provision. Chris might be able to answer that question for us
Mhm.
to see. But most communities, cause like in the summertime, you know, hey, we're having a cookout. Parallel park for a couple hours on the side of the road ain't gonna hurt anything, you know?
Right.
Have you guys ever had any, because I know, it's funny, again, historical knowledge on this. Originally, the side street situation became a problem, and because the almost same thing was proposed, which I thought was a good idea. But there was concern over, service lines for water
Yep, that's
being
another
parked on
problem.
top of, and that was a big concern at the time, the previous, I think it was Kalaki. It was his concern that it would cause the possibility of damage to the water.
That's a huge issue that a lot of communities face. No parking in the right of way, the space between the sidewalk and the road edge.
Yeah,
They own the property, so that becomes an issue, how do we enforce it,
Yeah.
you know? Now, the curb stops are designed to be drove on by a car,
okay.
you know, cement truck, that creates another issue. But,
Yeah,
once
I
again,
think
you know,
in the current ordinance, there's no parking in the village right of ways. But I do know, because when we did the Safe Routes to School Act and put in all these sidewalks, the village government at the time, it's somewhere in our ordinances that, you know, the village would grant a permit to people to put in temporary, parking area, so like gravel, asphalt milling, something non-permanent, in the right of way to park on. So like, most people recognize like, Long Grand River, there's a person who put down some crushed asphalt and they park there every day because the sidewalk come through and pretty much eats up the driveway they had. So there is a provision for it. You just gotta get a permit, and I think it's pretty nominal.
you know, and if they're gonna put in gravel, then they're gonna be removing the topsoil, so you get a misdig, we show up, we mark where that curb stop's at.
Yeah.
You know. Now, in an emergency situation, if I can't shut it off, tow truck company's only a call away. Do we wanna go that route? Absolutely not. Have I in the past? I have, because it sure beats filling your house with water. We don't take your car, we just move it so we can get to the curb stop, you know. It's not an impound, so I don't want people to think that. It's just, we need to scoot it over a little bit so we can shut your water off, you know.
Right.
But generally speaking, if people realize they have a water leak in their house, usually they're home and we can get the car moved, you know. So, I mean, it's definitely something we can have a discussion on, handle it more as a case-by-case basis, I think, instead of community-wide.
Right.
Because every property is set up different.
Yeah,
So,
it really is.
yeah.
So, is it no parking on side streets,
During winter
November
months,
to April?
something like that. We could ask Chris for specifics, but I know most communities have a wintertime parking. So,
Okay,
yeah.
good idea. Anything else with regards to the parking structure itself? I think, those 4 items would really condense down the current ordinance substantially and simplify it.
Definitely clean it up.
Okay? Who's gonna do it? I mean, do you happen to know, I mean, to Josh's previous point about, the fund capture not staying here, is that something that you think we can work with Ames County?
I just really haven't been here long enough to know like how like our fines and our stuff works through the village. You know, like we have these state laws that we can write and we can take it forward. We write them, they get sent to the 55th District Court.
Right.
I would imagine the ones here would have to go through the village attorney, and then like, it would have to be a special Webberville. I mean, I'm just not really sure how that part goes, because they'll have to have their own attorney, and they have like their own special like type of way that they go about it, so that they'll actually get some of the money out, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
So like, I don't want us to just come out here and enforce all this stuff, like you were saying, and everything goes right back to Ingham County and not to you guys.
Mm-hmm.
So like, I would also say like, the kind of issue I would see with us having to do it is that like, it sounds like you guys are having a lot of overnight issues.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, those are the kind of the times that where myself or Chris isn't here, and if I'm coming in and I'm getting in at 12, parking issues probably already resolved itself, unless it's like a really big issue, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So, I feel like if you would like want some consistency, it would have to be some type of consistency like with our schedules. So like us coming in, both either working like overnight or meeting each other, so we can like have that idea of like, all right, this is a problem, we need to address it now, or.
Right. Actually brings up another good point, which, Scott, I don't know if you know anything about this. If we were to, enforce this internally, I mean, I assume that would require, you know, if somebody wants to fight a ticket, we gotta go to court, right?
Well, from what I'm seeing in the ordinance as is, we already have adopted the Parking Violations Bureau here.
Okay.
And it's to be managed by the village clerk. So, as I envision this thing, between what the deputies already mentioned, is that if Ingham County Sheriff is gonna be issuing the tickets, so one thing we probably wanna establish to make sure that, because we don't wanna get our stuff bogged down in Mason with our local parking, right? We probably have to do a check-in with Wigglesworth, or at least get a letter of understanding that if a deputy from the Ingham County writes a citation under our local ordinance, as I envision it, the deputy would put the ticket on the car, we might even have to furnish the ticket book, right, have it printed, and then the deputy at the end of the shift or at some point would bring the tickets here to the clerk. And then if anyone wanted to challenge the ticket, you know, dispute how long the car was parked there, or accept responsibility and pay, it'd be Jessica at that desk managing that issue.
Okay.
And it looks like it's already set up that way for here.
Gotcha.
I would just want to make sure that, Ingham County Sheriff's Department was on the same page, that they're okay with us giving a ticket book to,
Okay.
so.
Is that something you can look into, or do you need me to call Wigglesworth directly?
I could definitely look into that. My only worry about that is like, looking at that initial step, we write a ticket, we bring it in, we turn it in, well, if somebody just doesn't care about it, like, at that point, like, who's to follow up with them about?
So
paying the ticket?
it'd be the clerk.
Okay,
Yeah, because if you were to write the ticket,
right,
and you brought it back here, at that point, the way I view it is Ingham County Sheriff's Department that's it. And the only time that you'd be called in maybe is if there was a dispute as to you recognize the vehicle or that you wrote the ticket, but,
right.
those are few and far between. and kind of some of the points that were mentioned here, if the village is concerned about being compassionate and making sure that we don't sanction the wrong person or somebody that had an honest mistake, that could be discretion given to the clerk. But that's kind of how I envision it, because I work with other municipalities, and some municipalities just use the parking ticket as more as scare tactic than actually worrying about getting paid. They're just like,
Right.
look,
Yeah.
get it moving.
Well, and that's a point that I've been wanting to make, and to be clear, I don't want this to be a revenue generator. I hope we don't have any parking
Yeah,
tickets.
right, yeah.
Well, that makes sense.
You know, this is not a get-rich-quick scheme, or this is how we're gonna pay for a dump truck, you know, through parking tickets. This is purely just to keep honest people honest.
I'm out.
I was thinking about going like a down line, like if they don't pay tickets, like normally people get warrants for things like that, and I was wondering like just like logistically, how would that look if it was coming from the village and the village ordinance and?
Right.
Well, how does it currently work with like Jim, when he issues, like citation or, you know, a fine
So
for a building permit, how does that work? 'Cause it's civil infraction,
civil infraction, if it's a ticket for property maintenance code or building code,
yeah,
writes a civil infraction ticket, takes it to Ingham County,
okay,
the district court. And then if that person, the defendant, doesn't either accept responsibility or challenge it, you know, in a formal setting,
yeah,
because it's under the jurisdiction of the court at that time, the court has the power to effectively put a warrant out, to his point, as a contempt of court matter. So they're being brought to court on a warrant, not because they did a violation with the property, they're being drugged to court in cuffs because
So,
they didn't report to court.
so yeah, so couldn't it be, I don't know the codes, but couldn't it be if they didn't pay the parking ticket to Webberville, couldn't they then issue a civil infraction?
Yeah, I
And
mean,
then send that to the 55th District Court, and then that's how, you know, enforcement goes if they don't pay to the village?
yeah, so that is I have seen that happen to where the first violation is all controlled here,
Yeah.
in the example I just gave, and then on the second violation, as long as we keep good records, that person has not followed through, and you know that they're not, apparently at the local level, getting their attention, then Ingham County could cite them for the state law violation.
Yeah.
So, but even if with the tickets that came in here, and if somebody was not responsible or takes responsibility for the alleged violation, I'll double check this, but I'm almost certain we can move that ticket to the district court
That's kind of what I was
and
thinking.
motion the court and say, look, Judge, you know, there's these sanctions levied, we've gotten no response, we need the assistance of the court now.
Yeah.
And I think they would abide, I mean, that would be your problematic, worst case scenario person, right?
Right.
So-
Yeah,
Sam, is this limited to just overnight?
I believe that's what the council's general consensus is
And
right
the
now.
side streets are overnight also, or is that anytime?
So technically, in the ordinance currently, there's no parking anywhere downtown between 3 and 6 AM.
Okay, what about the side streets?
That includes side streets, right? You know, it's village-wide.
But could we not amend that for winter time, say November 1st to April 1st?
Yeah. Yep, no parking, no overnight parking.
No
because-
overnight parking.
You're gonna have
99%
to-
of
You're gonna
all-
have to put a time limit on that, because,
Yeah,
you know, what's overnight?
right,
You know, if somebody's working third shift,
and that's what we would do.
right,
Because then I would schedule our snow removal activities for that time window.
for that time frame, gotcha.
So,
Okay. So, good discussion. I think you're gonna check back with your folks on the ticketing aspect.
So you answered all my questions, so I can bring it back and pitch it to them, let them know what we're thinking and what you guys are thinking and.
Perfect. Thank you.
Are we gonna have to have the ordinance number on those signs also?
I don't know if we have to, it's not a bad
As per
idea.
ordinance,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah.
Good suggestion.
yeah, a lot of times when I've seen them, it just says per ordinance.
per ordinance.
It doesn't
Because I
say
mean,
it,
if,
because in
if
case
there's
it-
nothing on there like that, some people will take that as, oh, that's just a suggestion.
Right.
because there's nothing behind it to back it up.
Oh, the speed limit signs don't say per statute.
Oh, that's a suggestion. No, to some people it is.
Oh, yeah, there it is, right there.
It's whether fast or slow.
I thought it was just an idea.
So I think I've got pretty good direction on those two things to take back to Chris. The third and last is a fee schedule. So Jim Wright did provide us an email with kind of examples of what other folks do. I mean, this is really up to us however we want to structure it. It seems like, you know, based on what I know, pretty typical. You know, first violation is smaller fee, second within a time frame, and then third. So the example Jim provided at the bottom, I think is probably reasonable. First violation in 3-year period is $50, second violation within 3 years is $125, and a third within 3 years is $250.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much standard run of the mill.
Yeah.
I don't believe Jim just pulled those numbers, you know, out of thin air, so.
No. Yeah, he didn't say which municipality this is for, but, what's that?
I think it was Royal Oak.
Royal Oak.
That's a pricey area.
You can even do the first one as a warning. Here's your warning. Next one's $50.
It's a good idea.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's
You know,
even
and
better.
you're not upsetting somebody right off the get-go. You're just, listen, you're violation here, so
Right.
signs mean something.
Yeah, if you're doing that, you're gonna have to figure out a warning system so that the officers, if that's who's gonna be enforcing it, can keep track of that, some sort of a
Who the
system, so
person
they keep
is.
track of the warnings.
Well, either way, they would, if we're gonna do the tier system, there'd still need to be a way to track it.
Yeah, and then also obviously a time of how long that warning actually stays, like, is it one warning forever, your whole life? Or is it a warning that in a year
Yeah,
yeah, just because, I mean, it's,
yeah, first violation, you get a warning.
yeah. I
Every
mean, I guess
year.
people
So-
change cars enough that like maybe 4 or 5 years will go by that they get a car and they get a new license plate, but I can tell you right now, my license plate has literally been the same for almost 20 years. So I would be still sitting on a warning.
So I think this was discussed, but I might have zoned out, I'm not sure. I'm plowing at 3 o'clock in the morning, come around the corner and there's cars parked in the road. How are we, what are we doing at that case? I mean, you're gonna have brand new babies, so you're probably gonna be up anyways, so I'll just call it. I mean, but.
Officer will not
how-
call.
What are we, how are we gonna go about that?
Yeah, I mean, that's, I guess that's one of the pros to keeping this internally is you could enforce that right then and there. You know, be it a warning or, you know, with the second fence. It doesn't necessarily get the car moved right away,
Right,
but it gets addressed, you know.
Prevents it from
about as
happening again.
expeditious as you can get.
because I know this might be a question for you, I would say. Sam and I have talked about doing it internally for quote-unquote deputizing, we'll just say me. Is that something that's feasible? I mean, because I'm not a law enforcement officer by no means.
It'll turn you into a meter maid.
Yeah, you know,
So
We'll get you to shorts even.
I'm getting them.
I do
But like-
know that Jim offered, if we keep it internal, to provide training and resources for somebody who may not be experienced with this.
I just want to make sure that it was something that was actually feasible to do
Oh, from a legal standpoint.
from a legal standpoint for individuals that, you know, we aren't law enforcement officers.
Well, if you went back to your orange sticker, so you're plowing,
Yeah.
there's a car sitting there.
Yeah.
You've got a sticker made up that says, warning, not to be parked on side streets between these hours during snowfall season, stick it on.
There's your first warning.
There's your notice.
Yeah.
There, you've been put on notice. If it happens again, it could be towed.
Yep.
I think that would be a lot easier.
That's all, I mean, that was from my point, you know, like, I haven't been up here for a lot of winter months, but a couple municipalities I've been to, they have like certain days that they plow and stuff, like they got trucks or vehicles on the road or whatnot. they have some type of language in their ordinance that says like, hey, if you're parking on this road a certain day, certain time, you know, you're like at risk to get towed or something like, and that was the issue that I was looking at. It's like, yeah, we can get these cars from parking overnight and give them tickets and stuff, but what happens when it comes to a situation, you got the same car you deal with all the time, and you got to plow, but there's cars in the road, and
I mean, I can move the car, they're not gonna be happy, but I can move them.
Well, and that's the reality is, we just need the car moved.
Yeah, that's all I want. I don't care about anything else, just get it out of there, you know?
And that might be something too with that situation is maybe there's a way for the sheriff's department and DPW to be tasks where they both can kind of work together, where it's like Ryan can give a warning, and then if there's a car that violates again, then he can contact the sheriff's department and say, hey, this car's here, we need to make you aware that, like, they need a ticket.
He can take a picture of it with his phone, it's time stamped of what date it was, and so when it's there again on next Thursday, you've already been noticed.
Right.
To your point, Scott, if we can work it with Ingham County such that, you know, basically the local deputies are just, you know, dispersing the ticket and then everything goes back to the clerk, yeah, why couldn't we have both agencies, you know, kind of dual enforcement?
Yeah, I mean, as far as keeping track, I mean, the way I've seen other municipalities do it, it's almost like an old style tickets to where it's carbon copy. You flip it, so that way, whatever officer is on the street, if you just flip through the carbon copy, see if there's been a previous license plate. I mean, I think it could be, it's very manageable. And to the snow plowing and things like that, I think once the community realizes that it is now going to be enforced, what may be kind of feels like a big problem now probably will resolve itself. People will be wary of it.
I think it
I don't
will,
think it'll be a huge.
especially if we go to the wintertime parking schedule, you know, and
And
obviously
you might even
keep
wanna start that
communicating.
schedule a little bit before the snowfall actually hits, so that way you start getting people in the mindset like, hey,
Yep.
Gotta move it.
That's why I wanna say most of them are November 1, you know. Are we gonna have snow? Probably not, but you know, it has happened.
It's usually November 1 through
I think it's
March
November 1,
31st,
yeah,
usually.
yep. So, you know, goes back to the enforcement of it, how do we do it? You know, is it internal with us? Just make sure that that's something that it's even feasible, legal to do, working with you guys, you know. That way we don't get all these grand ideas and go, oh crap, we forgot how to, you know, how we're gonna do it, so.
Right. Okay, so, I guess we're gonna do, first offense in 12 months is a warning. Second in 12 months, 50.
Yeah,
Third in 12 months,
125,
25.
just going off what Jim recommended.
Yep.
And then it goes to 250.
I hope we don't go beyond the third offense in 12 months.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, I don't wanna see any of
One and
it,
done.
you know,
No.
but.
I think we have habitual offenders too that are, I mean, I think probably if you put it in the ordinance that maybe you guys can grant like a variance or a special use permit if it's someone that it's a driveway issue, that they just can't fit their vehicles in their current driveway, so they are required to do that. Something
Yeah,
like
and
that.
maybe it could be worded, well, I don't wanna say vague, but worded broadly enough with, the parking pass structure for people who reside in the village core with limited options, that it could be extended to other residents who, if deemed appropriate, have a similar circumstance, could be granted.
Yeah, that's a good way to work with it.
Yeah.
I don't think you have very many, I mean, I haven't really seen any, but, I mean.
I can think of 3 houses that might go that route,
Yeah,
and I think all it would be is just on a case-by-case basis.
Yep.
yeah. And if you
Generally,
have their contact
with
information.
my approval, I go out, inspect the site, you know, water stops here, it's not gonna hinder anything.
Yep.
But, you know, you gotta put gravel in, you're not gonna be parking on grass, creating a mud bog. you
Well, I
know,
think that's where it
topsoil.
would be, probably similar to how some residents have come forward to the council looking for forgiveness on shoveling sidewalks that go nowhere.
Yep.
I think it'd have to be handled similarly.
We do a case-by-case basis, on-site inspection, you know, we would figure it out. By no means do we want to, you know, for lack of better wording, we don't wanna be mean to the residents, you know?
No.
They have a house that they have to live in, and all of us have certain, you know, quirks about our houses or our families or whatever, so I think it's something that we can definitely work out.
Yep. Okay. Any other discussion or comments on parking before we move on? If not, we'll go to our last item for new business, which is Lana's training for the Spring Course Summit. It's a MML course on May 16th and 17th. Lana, I'll let you fill in the gaps there.
So, I did the virtual one just a couple weeks ago, and that's the one I was kind of touching base when we were talking about the budgeting, where I just learned a little. So this is the next step for the advanced, where I'm actually earning credits. Kind of like what Jessica is going to, but it's for us. Really, I'm enjoying it, I'm learning more, so, taking a lot of notes. I'll be meeting people though this time, actually from other municipalities. I mean, I am meeting them over Zoom, but I'll be meeting them face to face, so I'm actually looking forward to that.
That's in Bay City.
Yes, Bay City.
Okay, so the course itself is $260. Since it is an overnight, the hotel for that is $143.19. That would be plus mileage and our standard meal allowance per our ordinances, if and when meals are not provided. If anybody likes to make a motion on that?
I'll make a motion to approve Lana to attend the Spring Summit for MML from 5/16 to 5/17 for $260, with a room for $143.19, as well as to pay the mileage and the meal allowance when meals are not provided.
I'll second.
Roll call?
McEwen,
Yay.
Schoenberg,
Yes.
Stanfield,
Yes,
Walter,
Yes.
Schulte.
Yes. Okay, that concludes our new business. Did anything come in from the live feed? That needs addressed?
No. I did find that, outage for outdoor lights link, and I shared it with the live stream.
Okay.
And then I'll share it on Facebook, and then we'll actually do a tab on the website as well.
Awesome.
I did a drive through the whole village a week or so ago. I had to come in for a complaint, so I was already in, drove around, I put in, I think 11 lights, so.
Yeah, one right here, I'll put that in right now, I can really see it right here.
If it's on one of the dual, if it's on one of the dual poles, you know,
Yeah.
on the decorative poles,
Yeah.
we have to put a comment on them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll look at it if you want on my way out, because I'm parked out back.
Yeah,
That way I can click exactly on, and I'll put the comment that it's 2 heads.
okay.
So is that DTE that's putting in all the new LEDs?
Yep.
The really bright ones?
Yep.
Yeah, I think that's standard now. Anything
They are,
Anything that gets replaced is LED.
they are ferociously bright. They did a couple on Party Road, and then when I turn in on the morning off of Gramer Road, I'm like, whoa.
There's one on Grand River,
Yeah.
when you're driving, it's like, okay,
Yep.
this section's like really
There's, it's an ongoing struggle, and DT is excellent at it, because it's a huge push for the dark sky initiative, where all the lights are pointing down, so we don't have any light going up. Light pollution is huge. So they're trying to find a good product that, you know, lights up the roadway and sidewalks, safety. But on the other hand, you know, we're not flooding the sky with all this light.
There's one block down from my house the other night, and so looked down there and went, wow, that's
Yeah.
bright. Man, that's on their block.
It's all Edison.
So, anything else before we adjourn? If not, is there a motion?
I will make a recommendation to adjourn at 7:54 PM.
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? All right, thank you everybody for coming.
No, because